If I thought for sure that he actually meant to get that Nazi tattoo and liked that it was on his body for all that time, I would be against him. But the context clues suggest otherwise. He's never written anything else like that. He's never showed any anti-Semitic trait.
But it's not,
anything.
I think the difference is you're focused on what you think. And I think other people want to talk about what the voters in Maine are going to think.
Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks was a guest on Mehdi Hasan's Zateo channel to engage in a debate with Democratic commentator Kaivan Shroff about corporate Democrats, the ongoing controversy with Graham Platner, and some other subjects. The entire thing was about 30 minutes long. I picked out a couple of clips here that I wanted to focus on and share my thoughts. So we're going to take a look at this debate with Mehdi Hasan, Cenk Uygur, Kaivan Shroff, Democratic commentator. Let's get into it together.
The corporate Democrat that Schumer picks loses like 98% of the time. They're like the worst candidates. So she's just going to go out there and be like, oh, I love corporate donors. That's not going to beat Susan Collins. We've already tried that 100 times. So to me, Mills is a guaranteed loss. That's not a gamble. You're almost definitely going to lose. So why would I go in that direction? That makes no sense at all. And is there a difference between Mills, who's 77 and it keeps getting backed like almost all the corporate Democrats because she delivers for the people who wanted a return on investment, the donor class, the corporate class? Well, that's different than Bernie Sanders, who's still in there because he's backed by the American people and grassroots fundraising and seems alert.
Do you know a lot about Janet Mills' record in Maine, Cenk?
No, I don't.
So then what are you like? So I mean,
no, I know all the corporate Democrats. I know they're all losers.
But like this is why I think the conversation devolves.
I guarantee you, if she goes in the Senate, she does nothing.
It's like you don't agree with me. You're a corporate neo-lib shell.
Go ahead,
guys.
Give me a brilliant record in Maine. Go ahead,
Kaivan. You can tell us about Janet Mills' record in just a moment. Before I do that, just to check, we seem to be arguing on two different points here. One is it a liability for Platner to be the candidate or Mills to be the candidate? That's one issue. There's a separate issue, which is who's a better candidate, right? Which Cenk is making a very strong case, which I sympathize with, that Platner's record, the policy platform, is a very good policy platform that people want. Clearly, it's energized people. Do you recognize the distinction between those two different points?
Well, I think in the first case, who's a better candidate is hard to answer because we don't know anything about Graham Platner, and who has the better policies and who's more exciting. We also don't really know because we don't know details of Platner's policies. He's really just inherited the Leaders We Deserve hype, the Bernie Sanders hype, the Pod Save America Bros hype. And that's what I'm saying is that to do this national media tour that we've seen, by the way, again and again and again, he's
come out against genocide, Kaivan, which is a pretty big issue for the Democratic base. I don't know if Janet Mills has.
Sure. I just think every issue, right, is being nationalized, whereas you're saying this is some like DC hack job. His very hyper-local Maine operative political director is one of the people that has a main problem with this and says he's unelectable. They say there's more Oppo research. He said all sorts of things offending local communities in Maine, and we should be able to talk about that in a normal way. By the way, if you want to have him stay in, what I'm saying is stay in, debate the policies, don't do the conspiracy theory delusional smear of this is all, being puppeteered by Hillary Clinton in her basement in Chappaqua. That's not happening.
No, that's absurd. You're saying that Chuck Schumer has nothing to do with this?
No,
that his handpicked candidate enters the race, and all of a sudden a giant dump of Oppo research? Are you really saying Chuck Schumer has nothing to do with it?
By the way, even Hasan Piker, organizer memes, lots of people on the farther left of the spectrum are coming out and saying this makes no sense.
I don't even know what that means. First of all, why do I care what Hasan Piker has to say?
Because I'm just saying that of all the people I think
he's citing Hasan as a leftist, not as your nephew, Cenk, to be fair.
Yeah.
Okay. I think he's making the point that
so what? Sure. Look, there's a lot of people out to my left that I don't agree with.
But I'm just saying, who's this for then?
Hold on, Cenk, let me jump in and say.
That was a little testy there on Cenk's part. That what does he care about what Hasan Piker has to say there? I think there's still some bad feelings from last Thanksgiving. Maybe this Thanksgiving won't be so great between Cenk and Hasan. We'll see, I guess. That just struck me as funny.
Hey, I've struggled with this, which is why I wanted to moderate this debate, because I've liked Platner up until now. I've been that very clear that I've liked Platner up until now. I like his policy platform. I like the idea that he's populist and he's anti-establishment. But for me, I spend much of my time calling out Republicans for being in Nazi group chats and doing dumb shit and pretending like J.D. Vance coming out and saying, well, it doesn't matter. It's all just edgy humor. And I just think it undermines, no one's saying he's a Nazi, but doesn't it slightly undermine the progressive argument if you're putting up for candidate guy, you're like, well, I'm fine with his Nazi tattoo?
Yeah, it doesn't undermine my argument. For
Can I just say one thing about that tattoo, though?
Hold on. Let Cenk finish and then Kaivan, come back in.
All right, so two things there, Mehdi. So first of all, I don't believe in cancel culture, so I've never canceled anybody for stuff like that. So I stay
Hold on.
true to my
You said
principles.
at the start of this interview you would have cancelled him if it was a swastika.
Yeah, okay. So you're right. There is a line at some point. Fair enough. Okay, yeah. But like, so, and I'm sure that you could find one or two times in public figures where I said, yeah, that's way too far, right? But overall, I don't believe in cancel culture, and you know that. I have an enormous track record of hating cancel culture. Second of all, guys, the context matters so much, because if I thought he was a secret Nazi, would I support him? Absolutely not. Not even close. If I thought for sure that he actually meant to get that Nazi tattoo and liked that it was on his body for all that time, I would be against him. But the context clues suggest otherwise. He's never written anything else like that. He's never showed any anti-Semitic trait.
But it's not
anything.
I think
I'm inclined, I would say, kind of to agree with Mehdi Hasan here and Kaivan Shroff that, I mean, our bar is so low in the United States right now with politics, with Trumpism, and just the absolute clowns that we have on the right and the clowns that we have in MAGA, that maybe it's unfair to hold candidates on the left to a higher standard than them. But I think with this Graham Platner, who was somebody that, I didn't know much about until fairly recently. I would say most of America didn't know much about Graham Platner until very fairly recently. But I would say it just shows someone maybe having a lack of thoughtfulness. I mean, just to maybe, I know with tattoos that we have all kinds of people around the country that would have, and around the world that would have various tattoos that they've gotten that they think it's just a cool symbol and they don't really know exactly what it means. I get that, but it does to me show someone with a lack of judgment. As much of a clown and a moron as Pete Hegseth is, with the tattoos that he has that are problematic, and people on the left criticize him for that, and I think rightfully so. I don't think you can then do the opposite if it's a person on your team, quote unquote, and say, oh, Graham Platner, this means nothing. He just didn't know what it was. I don't know. I would kind of side with Mehdi Hasan here more than Cenk Uygur, in my opinion. But let me know in the comments what you think.
The difference is Kaivan, you're focused on what you think, and I think other people want to talk about what the voters in Maine are going to think and what's possible here. So that is a distinction. And I will say, with the tattoo, what we have from present day judgment, I mean, I just think this is a crazy fact pattern. You suddenly learn you're running for Senate with no experience, you haven't been vetted, you learn you have a Nazi tattoo on you that you've had for 20 years, and your solution is to immediately, within 24 hours, get some hideous animal tattooed over it and go on this victim tour. It's very strange behavior to me. It doesn't show somebody with the thoughtfulness, the judgment, the restraint to belong in the Senate. I'm not saying he can't prove those skills, but he has no established record where he's demonstrated. And all we know about him now are pretty negative things and a bunch of viral one-liners that, frankly, a lot of progressives have been saying in the last 5 years, which, by the way, he voted for Susan Collins in Maine until 2020. So he may not be one of those people. Worst case, he's kind of a grifter guy who sees his moment and is saying all the right things. And I'm not saying that. We don't know enough.
Well, a lot of people in the chat are worried about the Fetterman issue, Cenk, that you kind of went over. One person in the chat says, look at the UNH poll, the poll that shows them 30 points clear. It said very clearly that even the people who love Janet Mills and think she was a great governor will back Platner. If Mills is a candidate, a sizable number of Maine Dems will vote for Susan Collins simply on the seniority calculus and tell you they love Mills. She did a great job. I mean, the Mills, we don't know enough about Mills. I'm not a Maine expert. I think Cenk's agreed. But she did win, Cenk. She won the gubernatorial election in 2022, I think, by 12 points. So she's clearly popular in Maine.
Yeah, look, fair enough that I don't know nearly enough about Maine politics, and I don't know that we all are supposed to study Maine politics.
No, but it's about whether it's about whether.
Okay, hold on.
Hold on.
Let me finish. Right, but I do know national politics, and I do know not every time. Sometimes he gets it wrong, but Chuck Schumer almost always picks the worst candidate, and they are picked based on the fact of will they bow their heads to donor class. And so that's the number one trait that Chuck Schumer looks for. His candidates are not universally, 98% of the time, awful. So she is very likely to be awful, plain, vanilla, etc. So, okay, so listen, guys, the constant assumption is if you pick a boring, safe, corporate Democrat, they're going to win. That assumption is totally, utterly wrong. And on the Fetterman point, Mehdi, this is really important. Guys, I get it. Fetterman is so toxic that he's unfortunately now getting us to not support other candidates because we're worried they'll turn into Fetterman.
That's true.
But don't let him do double the damage.
By the way, I should point out someone
for no reason because of Fetterman, that makes no sense.
Someone pointed out in the chat, Jerry Calderola, that Fetterman had a stroke that debilitated him imperably. I do find it amusing that once
he got brain damage and became a Republican.
I do find it amusing that he got brain damage and became a Republican. Kaivan, let me ask you this. Patrick Loftus in the chat says, I'm a Maine voter. Thank you, Patrick. People here trust Graham. He just had a 500-person town hall last night after Tattoo-gate. He's clearly the better candidate. What do you say to Patrick?
Based on that people showed up for him now when we're not even close to June, which is the primary, and then not even close to November, 0 ads have been run at all. And I think the key here is about how electoral politics work, which is that against the Democratic primary candidates, he may be doing well. By the way, those polls that we're talking about, polls moved from likely Republican to toss up when Mills entered the race against Collins. And so we can all talk about polls and data, and these polls don't reflect the most recent scandals. But that said,
wait a minute.
He showed up, he's getting an audience. And I'm not there to deny that he has energy and momentum and some communication skills that are resonating with people. But what I'm saying is he's a very risky candidate who hasn't been vetted, who hasn't taken accountability.
Hold on, Kevin. Take Cenk's specific point that he's made multiple points now, which is there's an assumption that if you put Platner out of the way, you have a better chance. And Cenk's point is these corporate-backed, centrist, whatever you want to call them, mainstream establishment, use your term or pejorative.
But it's not true. Okay, yeah, so first I want to argue with his data.
They're not guaranteed a victory. We saw what happened with Andrew Cuomo in New York. We're seeing Mamdani's energy. Horrible candidate, agreed.
I respect you. I respect you a lot, but I think it's tough to compare Janet Mills to Andrew Cuomo.
Agreed. But could you compare Mamdani's energy and momentum to Graham Platner? Surely you can.
No, because he was an assemblyman who already did that work and went around, by the way, pretty quietly for months and months and months.
But they had lots of oppo on him too. They have him standing next to people.
I know, but I'm saying he was vetted heavily. He was heavily vetted during the primary. And he did the work, and he was in elected
office. But you're saying Platner shouldn't be vetted. You're saying Platner should step aside.
And by the way, he's, going to be the mayor at an age that everybody wants to pretend Graham Platner was a cherub baby boy. Okay? I mean, it's ridiculous. But back to Cenk's argument. First of all, the data, 98% of Chuck Schumer candidates fail. It's just not true. I mean, if your argument is that, yes, in red states, when there's an opportunity to flip a seat, the tactic has been to pick somebody that might be closer to the center because we think that would appeal to Republicans and independents who could get us over the edge. And may that be a wrong thinking? We don't know. I certainly don't think you have the data to back it up. But at the same time, I do think it's fair to say in an environment where we really aren't identifying any key policy issues in Maine that we think he's doing so much better on. Mills has delivered healthcare. She's delivered education. She's much better on climate than him, a lot of people are saying. And she's done great for the economy. And people are talking about affordability. Now we can talk about the distribution of those economic wins, I think matters, of course. But we should be having those conversations. And again, instead, this has been reduced to Graham Platner smearing establishment Democrats as part of this conspiracy against him, instead of taking any accountability that he is a new candidate, right?
I just want to bring in people from our chat. Spike Morales Westlake, he addresses the Fetterman point. He says, John Fetterman courted AIPAC money. Graham Platner resoundingly rejects it. Should we discount that? While flawed that he stands for something, unlike
But
Mills,
he's reading the tea leaves.
who has establishment-endorsed policies that don't excite anyone.
Okay, so
Cenk, go on.
Yeah. So first of all, let's note for the record that an earlier argument was that Mills is so popular in Maine, and you could see it in in her wins and her polling. Then 1 minute later, Mills is losing by 30 points to Platner in the primary. So, okay, so which one is it? Is she popular or not popular? Because she doesn't look popular right now. She looks like she's getting her ass handed to her. So second of all, this idea that the Mills of the world are closer to the center is a giant misnomer. No, populism is closer to the center. The center of Washington is corruption, and American people hate it. So when you go, oh, I did a bipartisan Republican bill where we cut taxes for the rich, is not something that is at the center of America. It's the center of Washington, D.C.
This one is a tough one, I think, because I don't think any of the three here, Kaivan Shroff, Cenk Uygur, Mehdi Hasan. I don't think any of the three are completely wrong, and I think they all make good points. Cenk is definitely right that the establishment corporate Democrats are losers. And to have somebody like Graham Platner, who is a Bernie-backed guy, in my opinion, it would be better to have somebody like that running because they have policies that appeal to what people want now, not just Democrats. I think a lot of this populism can appeal to Republicans if the kind of team veil is drawn from their eyes, which I understand is difficult to do. That said, like I said kind of at the beginning of the video, the tattoo thing is concerning. And when you're going to hold people on the other side to that standard to say, hey, if somebody has this tattoo, then they're disqualified, as Mehdi Hasan is kind of saying here, it is hypocritical if you don't apply that standard to your side as well. But I see where Cenk is coming from, that, you know, the more corporate candidate in our current moment tends to be a loser, and that's what the establishment of the Democratic Party is going to push. But like Kaivan Shroff is saying, you know, this Graham Platner, he wasn't a child when he got this tattoo. It wasn't like he was 15 and running around with his friends and was just like, hey, let's get this cool symbol. So it seems unlikely to me that he had no idea what it was. And if he just got the tattoo without thinking about it at all, that to me shows a lack of judgment. But let me know what you think about all of this. Who do you agree with here? Do you agree with Cenk Uygur? I know a lot of people aren't happy with Cenk Uygur anymore. Do you agree with Mehdi Hasan, what he had to say on his Zateo channel? Do you agree with this Democratic establishment kind of commentator guy here, Kaivan Shroff? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.